And Dennis, I'm leaving at, maybe I'll make it to 9:05 or 9:10 now, which is an
8:05
hour different. Yes.
Yeah.
So talk really fast. All right.
No, you're just going to have to carry on without me.
Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise smarter. And I'd like to welcome back to our show, our co-host from PackYourPixieDust.com. How you doing tonight, Christy?
I am well. How are you, Steve?
Not too bad. We are heading north again.
Woohoo!
Come on. I need a better woohoo than that.
Woohoo!
There we go. All right. It's amazing how many people have gone to Alaska this year. I don't know. It just must have been, on everybody's bucket list, and they're kind of cleaning that bucket list out. So I'd like to welcome to the show tonight, Dennis from Texas. How you doing tonight, Dennis?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me.
Definitely.
I'm not sure that was enough excitement for Steve today.
Yeah. Come on. No. I won't make our guests come on and do that hard. So, well, welcome to the show, Dennis. I really appreciate it. I know it's taken us a little while to get you on the show, to record this. You guys went on this cruise a little while ago. But before we jump into your cruise, why don't you give our audience kind of a little bit of background of your family and your Disney background?
So I am married to my wife, Beth, and we have two boys that are currently 15 and 11. They were 14 and 11 at the time of our cruise. I go way back with Disney. When I was a kid, my parents and my two brothers, that was our annual vacation, was down to Walt Disney World. When my wife and I got married a little over 20 years ago, we took our honeymoon to Walt Disney World. We took our kids to back to the world in 2013, 2015, and then we decided to do our first Disney cruise in 2017 with the Bahamas. And then my wife and I were just back there this past April for our first Run Disney event. And so we're really, really big fans of Disney.
Which Run Disney event did you do?
We did the Star Wars Rival Run weekend.
So which races did you run?
We did the 5K, 10K, and the half marathon.
Oh, nice. Did you do the...
That's awesome.
Yeah, did you do the half marathon? So you get the rival medal, right? If you do the half marathon, or what? There was a medal you could get if you did something at home as well, right?
Yeah, we did. I did the Kessel Run Challenge, which was the virtual half marathon. And then if you ran that and the Rival Run weekend half marathon, you got the Millennium Falcon medal, the Kessel Run medal. And then you got another medal for running both the 10K and the half marathon that weekend.
Yeah, I think that's kind of cool that they're doing that. They used to have the run. What was it? It was like they had it out. If you ran at Disneyland and then you ran at Disney World, the two different races, you get the medal. But since they're not doing the races out of Disneyland right now, I'm glad they've kind of kept that going with the virtual part of it. And what were you guys' thoughts? What did you think of Run Disney?
Oh, loved it. Absolutely loved it. I only really started running about a year and a half ago. And I set that goal shortly thereafter to run some sort of a Disney event. And then my kid's godmother had just run the Rival Run weekend last year, and she brought back her medals. And being a huge Star Wars fan, my eyes got real big and I fell in love with the whole idea. And so we planned that out and we had a fantastic time. I trained hard for it, worked through a couple minor nagging injuries, but then when I got there, it was an interesting morning. The 5K got delayed due to lightning for about an hour and a half, that first one.
No.
But after that, it was really great. One of my favorite memories of the whole thing was running through Pandora over there at the Animal Kingdom. It was still just dark enough that they still had that bioluminescence going in the park. And that was just a lot of fun to run through. And then seeing all the characters out on the course and getting your opportunity to take pictures with them and running through the World Showcase and having all the people from the different countries come out with their flags and root you on. It was just a fantastic weekend. I can't think of a better place. It spoiled me. I can't think of a better place to run a race now, but I'm probably not going to get to do another of those for a little while.
Well, I hope you've got those medals displayed someplace nice so you can see them, because they're just amazing, aren't they, Christy?
They are. Disney goes all out on the medals.
Yeah, they really do. I've got them sitting actually on the bed in my office behind me at the moment. I've been traveling a lot this year, so I've got a lot of stuff to hang up, and just haven't gotten around to that quite yet.
Oh, no problem. Actually, mine are in my desk drawer, so I need to get mine up eventually here sometime soon, too. Well, let's jump into the cruise itself. Okay, you guys decided to go to Alaska. That's a big switch, going from the Bahamas up to sailing on the Wonder in Alaska. What made you guys decide to want to do Alaska now?
Well, a couple things. I'm the type of person that could go back to Disney World every single year and have a great time and go with the familiar. My wife is a bit more of an explorer, and she likes to try out new places. And that's what got us into cruising in the first place. So I wanted to do Disney, and she wanted to try something new. So that's why we did the Bahamas cruise a couple years ago. And then when we took our an anniversary cruise last year around the UK, I got bit by the travel bug. So we just started to trying to decide what we wanted to do next. And neither one of us had been to Alaska. I had heard a lot of great things about it from people who had done that cruise, and the Disney Cruise Line blog had pictures from there. And so we decided, hey, let's give that a whirl. And that was essentially it. We wanted to do the Disney cruise. We wanted to go someplace new that we could explore. And that seemed like the logical choice.
When was the trip?
The cruise departed from Vancouver on June 3rd and returned on June 10th.
And this was just I don't want to call it the normal, but it's the main cruise that Disney does every time up out of Vancouver, 7 nights. They do run a couple they do a 5-night, I believe, and a 9-night as well, but this is just the main 7-night cruise that they did, right, Dennis?
That's correct. Yeah. Okay. 7-nighter.
So Alaska being a very different destination than going to the Bahamas, what were some of the things that you did to prepare for this cruise as far as thinking about what you were going to pack, talking about the weather, or just some of the experiences you wanted to have?
Well, I belong to a number of different Disney Facebook groups, and then I listen to a number of different Disney podcasts, and some of them will occasionally touch on the cruises. And so I started picking up ideas from there, and then I started asking questions in these Facebook groups about what are the can't miss excursions and things like that to do, because I felt like I had a pretty good idea of what was going to be available on the ship. I stumbled onto your all's podcast through another group and started downloading everything I could about the Wonder itself and Alaska cruises, and came up with a lot of good ideas there. And then I looked into TripAdvisor a bit and just kind of got some ideas for both Vancouver and Alaska for that, because we were in Vancouver for a couple of days beforehand. So it was gone a total of 10 days, and I ended up having too many things to choose from when it was all said and done, but that's the kind of problem to have.
Yeah. First world problems, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you guys fly up from Texas into Vancouver, and I know we were I remember going back and forth on Facebook, I believe, with you a little bit. Talk about what you guys had planned for Vancouver, where you guys stayed, and some of the things that you did before you left on the cruise.
Well, trying to pick a place to stay was a little bit of a challenge. They have a couple hotels that are right there by Canada Place, the port, and I looked into those, but one, they had no availability, and even if they did, the beds were a bit small for my boys, and so I ended up staying at the Delta by Marriott, which is 5 or 6 blocks away, maybe, and really, really liked it. It's right across the street from the Vancouver Lookout. It's just a couple blocks away from Gastown, and Chinatown's just beyond that. And we could walk down to Canada Place, which we did the first thing once we got there, and checked out I think there was a Royal Caribbean ship, and one of the Cunard ships was there. The Queen Elizabeth was there as well, and that just got us really pumped. But we had 2 full days after that, and so I had looked up some tours because I wanted to see some things, and I'd heard about Granville Island and the Capilano Suspension Bridge Park that were kind of can't miss opportunities. And so on that Saturday, we did it was through the Land Sea Tour Adventures, and we did a tour that took us to the Capilano salmon hatchery, which was pretty. We didn't actually see much about the salmon there because they weren't spawning at that time of year, but there was a trail there that we could wander around. So we did that for a little bit. It took us to Grouse Mountain, which was fantastic. Take a gondola up to the top. They have a raptor show. They had they call them orphaned grizzly bears, but they were adults at this point because they've had them for 15 years or so, that you could I don't want to say get up close, but closer than you're going to get to grizzly bears in the wild. And then if you had time, you could do some zip lining if you're into that, which we didn't have the time for that. And then they had a couple places to eat. And so that was a good portion of that adventure. And then we went to the Capilano Suspension Bridge Park and had a fantastic time. That was a real highlight for us. And then the following day on Sunday, we did another tour with Land Sea, and that was kind of the Vancouver City tour. So that took us to Granville Island, Stanley Park, the Vancouver Lookout, which we could have done on our own because, again, it was just across the street from the hotel. And then it drove through Gastown and Chinatown. But we got a real good feel, at least I felt, for Vancouver with those 2 tours.
Yeah, you hit just about everything. Look out that you could do there. Yeah, Vancouver, very walkable city, I think. I mean, a ton of different hotels. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the prices of the 2 hotels right across, but if those hotels are not in your price point, or if there's no availability, there are a ton of hotels downtown, like in a very walkable city to get to a lot of the places. They also have little water taxis, too. I don't know if you did any of those with the boats that take you over to Granville Island, but I guess you were with a tour company, so you probably didn't have to do that.
No, we just went over to Granville Island via the tour bus, and we were there for about an hour and a half, and we bought a couple snacks, but it was not a really great time for us. When we were there, it was not lunchtime. It was kind of in between lunch and dinner, so it wasn't a great time to eat. So we just did some shopping. I came away with some First Nation art that I really liked. Really pretty area. I told my wife after our last day in Vancouver, is like, if I found I had to move here tomorrow, I wouldn't be terribly disappointed. I really became enamored with the city.
Well, let's turn to the cruise itself. You guys are sailing out of Vancouver at a Canada Place. How did you guys get from your hotel? You said it's just 5 blocks away. Did you walk over there, or how did that work as far as getting on board the ship?
Before we actually get to that, I went for a run that morning, and I was planning on running about 6 miles, and so I ran down to Stanley Park, and as I was coming around the corner, here came the Wonder into
Oh my
port.
gosh, that's so cool.
And it was, and so I snapped a picture of that, and then I raced the boat back to the port. And I beat it. It got there. It was in port. It hadn't finished docking, but I took a couple pictures of my selfies of myself with the Wonder there in the background. That was pretty cool. But we took our time that morning. We had about 11 o'clock boarding time, and I had not had a real good sense of Vancouver's geography. And so I had hired a car through Blacklane to take us over there. I didn't really need that because, as you were suggesting, Steve, we could have walked. It was not particularly far. My wife was glad that we had the car, and it did drive us right down to Canada Place and dropped us right off there where you turn over your luggage. And so it was extremely convenient. It's a very easy port to get into and get through. At least it was in my experience.
So you guys are on board the Wonder for the first time, and I forgot to ask you, I'm assuming, which ship were you on when you guys did the cruise to the Bahamas?
The Dream.
The Dream, so one of the bigger ships. What were your thoughts, what were your family's thoughts as you guys walked on board? Just a little bit smaller ship, but the Disney Wonder this time.
You know, I walked on, and it seemed very familiar, having been on the Dream before. When we first, got on, they announced the Keithley family, and so that was great. And we got shuffled off to Triton's, and so we hadn't for lunch, so we didn't get a real great chance to explore right off the bat. There's just something about wandering back onto one of these Disney ships and having that experience. I love the theming there, and they had the Ariel statue right there in the atrium. Mm-hmm. So we stopped and took our pictures in front of that. I was just very pleased with it. I knew it was going to be a bit smaller, but at first glance, it didn't seem significantly so. I was just really pleased with getting on there and just having a sense, having been on the Dream, that I kind of knew where things were going to be. And I liked that quite a bit.
Yeah, it's nice that Disney has a bit of a cohesiveness with their ships, so that if you kind of know where one thing is on one ship, you're likely to figure out where it is on the other ship.
That's a good point. I never really thought about that. If you're sailing with like Carnival or something like that, those ships are so different that that's probably something. I mean, I know there's some similarities in some of their ships as well, but I never really thought about that. That's a good point.
Always knocking on Carnival.
No, I'm not knocking.
Everybody knocks on Carnival. Poor guys.
I would say it's the same as Norwegian too, because the first cruise we went on was a Norwegian Gem, and there's like one deck where you can't go forward and you can't go back. So
oh my God, I hate that deck.
Yeah. So, anyways, it's nice to kind of have that familiarity. What were your kids' thoughts about getting on board the ship, and how excited were they to go to Alaska?
I spent some time trying to give them an idea of the things that we were going to do within Alaska. I ultimately picked the excursions, but I ran by some ideas for them, and they liked the ideas. They liked the plans. My kids liked the beach, so they were slightly disappointed that we weren't going to have an opportunity like that. But when I kind of told them the other things that we were going to do, they got excited for that. And, at one point, I was explaining to my kids that we were going to get dressed up one night to participate in formal night. And my 11-year-old said, I will do whatever it takes to get on that ship. And so it's perfect. They had the absolute right attitude about it. So they really were excited. And when we got on the ship, I mean, I could just see the smiles on their faces. They were pumped to be there.
What kind of stateroom did you guys go with?
We went with the veranda stateroom. For me, that seemed like it was a must in Alaska because of all the scenery that is up there, and that didn't disappoint. I know some people don't find the veranda as a necessity because they can always go up on deck or on deck 4 or go up to deck 9 and hang out there. But on our first day at sea, we spent quite a bit of time on our veranda just watching the mountains go by and the cascades and the occasional whale in the distance. So that was well worth the money for us.
And were you all in one cabin?
Yes.
How did that work out?
It worked out pretty well. Other than that day at sea, I didn't feel like we were too much on top of each other. Someone was either going to do something or coming back, and the room host does a good job of getting that room shifted back over from your nighttime arrangement to your daytime arrangement, the moment you leave. And so we were never really in each other's way. I mean, my oldest is as tall as I am now. And so my boys aren't small. And so I had a slight concern about that, but they did just fine on the that couch that turns into a bed and the pull down bunk, and had no complaints whatsoever. And the other benefit is that, those Disney ships, they have the divided bathroom. And so someone could be using the shower or the sink in that room, and then the other one could be using the sink in the other half of the bathroom. And we were able to get ready in that amount of space and not any problems.
Oh, perfect.
Well, let's turn to the food on board. So the Wonder, you guys this is your first time on there. There's there's a new restaurant there, Tiana's Place. What were your thoughts about the main restaurants, and what were some of your experiences there?
Our favorite was Tiana's Place overall, and that had to do a bit with the food selection, and then the band, the Crawfish Crooners, that was there was fantastic. Really enjoyed listening to them every night. Tiana and Lewis coming by the table was a bonus. That wasn't real necessary for us because while we've all seen The Princess and the Frog, it's not a movie we've seen several times, but just the general environment. The other thing was that our table was more towards the center of that dining room there, as opposed to Triton's. We were in the corner by the kitchen, and so it was always loud, and then a bit on the warm side over there. And then Animator's Palette, we dined there. That was the restaurant we dined at 3 times, and we had a fun experience every single time we were there.
Oh, good. I feel like Triton's, whether it's Triton's or Royal Palace or whatever name it wants to be called, is loud on all the ships. It is a loud restaurant. And so it's got to be something, the way that room is laid out or designed or whatever. But we always find it's the loudest restaurant.
Yeah, and for us, it was the added kitchen noise that we're getting, because I must have been near the dishwasher, because I constantly heard plates and things getting rattled around. And after a little bit of time, you were able to put it out of your mind, but it was just kind of jarring when you first sat down there at that table.
Yeah, going back to Tiana's Place, I love that type of music. I think I've said that before. I mean, there's something the way they do it too. I was just thinking about it as you're talking about like the noise that the band plays, and it's just it's loud, but it's not overly loud. Does that make sense in the small space that you're kind of in when you really think about what a dining room is? I mean, it's a big room, but I guess, I don't know if that's making sense. You're not in a huge concert hall or anything like that, so they got to be kind of cognizant of how loud they're playing, but they just do it perfectly in there for some reason. I love that place.
Yeah, and the other thing I noticed is that while there's conversation going around, there's also a lot of people that are listening to the music or singing along with the music. And it's tunes that everybody knows, because it's kind of a blues or a jazz take on all the Disney songs that you already know. So it was just a lot of fun listening to those guys.
Did you guys experience Palo at all on this trip?
No, I took a tip from you all, and I told my kids on the first night of the cruise they had to go try out one of the kids' clubs, and they could both go to the Edge because they were just that was the one club that they could both go to. So I said, you guys need to go and try it out for an hour. And if that was going to work out, then I was going to try and get my wife and I into Palo. But they were good sports, but they're kind of introverted. And so they wandered in, they spent their hour there, and we picked them up. We asked them how it was, and they said, it was fine. I was like, well, do you want to go back? No, not really. And so, and that's okay. With my boys being the age they are and their weekly martial arts activities, and my oldest just had his first year of high school, and so he's always got things going on with that and lots of homework and projects. It was nice just to have the 1 week of uninterrupted their attention for that week,
and no internet.
Yeah, and so we didn't mind so much. I told them that the next time we do a Disney cruise that they can't expect to have one evening where they're getting dinner on their own, because I plan on taking my wife to Apollo's. But it just didn't work out for us that way. But at the end, we enjoyed the rotational dining well enough that I didn't feel like I was missing too much. But I have nothing to compare to it because I've never been to the adult restaurants.
Well, on our last cruise, just for whatever it's worth, we went to Pala one night. We don't do it every cruise either. We went to Pala one night, and our servers were like, "Are the boys going to dine with us?" And some of my kids were 9 and 12. Yeah, 9 and 12 on the cruise, and we're like, well, I didn't really think about that they could just come to the dining room themselves. Now, this doesn't work for every family, but I'm just throwing this out to you, Dennis. I mean, if they feel comfortable doing that. The servers were like totally adamant, like, yeah, I want them to dine with us. We will take care of them, and then we'll push them on their way and get them going to whatever they're going to do next. And they were kind of hurt that they didn't come and dine with them because they ended up doing something else that night. We ended up doing something else. We just went to Cabanas and got them some food there. But I don't know. I've never really heard anybody talk about that before, and I guess I didn't mention it, but I'll throw that out there if that would work for you guys on your next cruise. That's definitely a possibility as well.
Oh, that is my plan next time.
Steve, did you get Cabanas or did you get quick service?
We went to, you know what, I take that back. We did quick service on this one, and it was 2 cruises prior that we went to Cabanas and got dinner for the kids there then. It was quick service last time. I apologize. That's right.
Okay, and now that I think about it, I do vaguely remember us having a conversation that you did really actually like the Cabanas during the middle of the week.
Yeah, it was awesome. I think we talked about this before. Cabanas, sometimes you go up there and they've got a buffet, but they also do some made-to-order stuff, like if you want to order a steak or something like that, and the steak comes out hot off the grill. So that was one thing, I guess it was the 2 cruises ago that when we ate up there that our kids really enjoyed that. It was like totally fresh foods rather than stuff that had been made a little bit earlier, maybe put under a heat lamp for a little bit before they bring it out.
Yeah, so Cabanas, for our listeners, offers a sit-down restaurant that it starts at 6:30 during the cruise every night except for the first and the last night. So you can't go up there for dinner if you decide to not go to your rotational dining for whatever reason. But it is available the rest of the nights.
We nearly did Cabanas one evening, but we just liked our servers so much that we kind of didn't want to miss having them one night. Their names were Neoman and Jack, and they took fantastic care of us. They knew what I wanted to drink when I sat down at the table. I love that they cut my 11-year-old steak every single night. They could not have been better. They took such good care of us. But we did Cabanas virtually every morning for breakfast, except I think it was Ketchikan that we got into later in the morning, and we did brunch at Triton's that morning. But we had a great experience every morning getting breakfast at Cabanas. That I fell in love with the Mickey waffles and the strawberry syrup, and the kids liked the array of pastries, and we found a ton of good stuff to eat up there in the morning.
Back to the dining really quick. Did you have anybody else at your table?
That's actually kind of funny. We had the second seating for dining, and that first night when we sat down, it was the 4 of us at one end of the table, and then there was a setting for another family of 4. And when we cruised on the Dream, we had our own table, and so I was a little surprised about that there was going to be another family there. When they showed up, I believe the other family was from Panama, and we made some pleasant introductions. Hello, hi, how are you? But other than the wife of the family, most of them didn't speak English or much English. But then they were gone the next day. They moved to the earlier dining. So we ended up having the table for 8 to ourselves for the rest of the cruise.
Do you think they thought because you were from Texas, you too spoke Spanish?
I don't know. Their kids appeared to be about the same age as ours. And that was my thought is why we got paired up, is that it seemed like the families had compatible age ranges. But we saw them on one of our excursions, and they were perfectly pleasant. But again, they just preferred to eat earlier.
Well, I can understand that, especially with the time change.
Well, let's turn to some of the activities on the ship that you guys did, kind of thinking over your 7-day cruise. What were some of the things that you guys enjoyed, either you and your wife or as a family?
Well, my 11-year-old fell in love with Funnel Vision. He was up there quite a bit when we were out on an excursion. On our first day at sea, he spent, I don't know how many hours curled up under a blanket on one of the loungers just watching Disney movies on that Funnel Vision. He could not have been happier with that. As for the rest of us, my youngest, he did not particularly want to be around the game shows because he's afraid he was going to get picked. But we loved going down to either the Promenade Lounge or the or Azure, I think is what it's called, and then watching either The Wheel or Who Wants to Be a Mouseketeer. We did the Disney Toon trivia, but we got involved in a lot of those things. Never seemed like there was a time that at least one of those things wasn't happening. And my oldest actually got picked to do one of the puzzles on the wheel, and he absolutely killed it. we our side of the room was behind by a couple $1,000, and the problem was that everyone was solving the puzzle after they just had a couple letters. Well, he got a fresh puzzle, and he knew what the answer was, but he just kept going and racking up the money, and he ended up getting some absurd amount of points that round, with the rest of our side of the room just screaming at him to solve, even though he knew it. But and then ended up creating such a lead that the other side couldn't catch back up in the remaining 2 rounds that were left. So that was fun. And then we would go see some of the entertainers that were appearing in Azure as well. One evening, the main entertainment was Sean Farquhar. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but he's a 2-time world champion magician. And when we saw him, he told the story about
world champion.
Yeah, he was from, I can't remember where he said he was from in Canada, but then he traveled to China and won this competition amongst thousands of magicians every year. And the magicians would vote for the winners themselves. And so he won that twice. And I don't know, on the previous cruise, the non-Broadway style entertainment was fine, but it was not my favorite. He was just amazing. And so on the last day of the cruise, he appeared twice in Azure. He did a family show, then an adults only show, and we went back for both of those and had a great time. But, other than that, I would usually, so I'm originally from St. Louis, and it just so happened that my hometown St. Louis Blues were in the Stanley Cup Finals at the same time I was on this cruise.
Oh, man.
So I couldn't watch the games because they were on NBC, which is not shown on the ship. And I would therefore, after everyone else, I'm a bit of a night owl and a morning person. I don't sleep a whole lot, but I'd go down to the Crown and Fin pub in the back portion of the ship, and I'd catch up on the highlights from all the games. And that was a real nail biter because I ended up going the entire 7 games. They were nice enough to wait for me to get home to win the whole thing. But so every day I was going there just to catch up on what was happening, and I got to know the servers in that pub quite well. They knew me by name when I walked in, what I wanted, which was fun. But that was a lot of fun. I kind of every day I either wore a Blues t-shirt, my hoodie, or my hat, and I kind of became known around the ship as being the big Blues fan. And so everyone was always asking me if I knew the score, or the crew would come up and give me highlights if the game would be going on during one of the shows or something. So that was, if I couldn't see the games, it was kind of a fun still be able to keep up with it that way.
I've never heard that before. That's amazing. They don't show NBC because I know they show, like football games and things like that when football season's going on. That's amazing that they didn't show that. But congratulations to you and your Blues, man. I know what a big deal that is for everybody from St. Louis. That was an amazing run to see them win.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun. And, there was lots of people, several people from St. Louis, and, and I know there was one couple that every time they saw me, was like, "Oh, there's your Blues fan." The wife would say to her husband. Even when I didn't have the gear on anymore, people knew me for that. And the other funny story about that is that last morning of the cruise, our sea day back to Vancouver, it was raining and it was cold and windy outside, and I had gotten into the habit of getting up in the morning and either going to the fitness center and running on the treadmill or running around deck 4. At least did it a couple times, but I couldn't that day. And so I'd just been kind of walking around the inside of the ship, just checking out different places. And so finally I stopped on a chair on deck 5 overlooking the atrium. And it was when they were having that princess meet and greet where there's 4 princesses. It was like Tiana and Cinderella, and I can't remember who the other 2 were. But then Stitch came down the stairs and was messing with them, which was kind of funny to watch. Well, I sit down, and from the elevator bank, I see this woman in a wedding dress come around the corner, and there's a guy wearing sweats escorting her to wherever she needs to go. And she's on a mission, but he looks, "Oh, hey, go Blues." And she's like stopped dead in her tracks, turned around, walked back up to me and gave me 2 thumbs up. She's like, "Yeah, go Blues." And not 2 minutes later, I'm sitting down on a chair minding my own business, and then Goofy plops down next to me in his pajamas. And apparently the story his handler told me was that he was suffering from the time change and having a hard time adjusting. So it was just this really surreal 15 minutes of the cruise, but it was, again, one of my favorite moments. Just all these weird things happening, one thing after another.
You can't make that up, can you?
No, and you can't plan for it.
Yeah, and I love the interactions with Goofy there at the end, too. I mean, those are the kind of things that you just don't get generally when at the parks, and one of the fun things of being on board the cruise ships. So, well, I just looked up Sean Farquhar. He's not only a one-time, but he's a two-time world champion of Magic. He makes the comment, when I was born, the doctor slapped me, and I said, pick a card. So there you go. He's got a website. So if anybody wants to check him out, a lot of times these performers will come back on the Disney ships. If he's from Canada, he might be back on again next year, and possibly some other ones. But you can definitely check him out, or check out his website there. So kind of cool. How about just the main shows? Any thoughts on that, Dennis?
Yeah, well, we skipped the Golden Mickeys because we had seen that on the Dream. I can't remember what else there was that we wanted to do that night, but there was something that we wanted to do, so we skipped that one. But then we went to Disney Dreams and Frozen and enjoyed both of those immensely. I'm always impressed with the effects that they manage to work into those shows, and they get great performers to sing all the songs, and I'm there for the nostalgia as much as anything. And, I have boys, so they weren't into the Frozen craze, but everyone in the family really enjoyed the show.
Yeah, I think it's a really good show. And I guess that's one thing that we've never really thrown out there. I guess people probably picked up on this. They don't have a pirate night when you go up to go up to Alaska. And did they have a Frozen deck show? They do show obviously they have the play in the theater, but did they have any type of deck party too? Do you remember?
Yes. In the middle of the week, they had the Freezing the Night Away show up there, and it was fine. It's a lot in the same spirit as the Sail Away show that you see on that first day when the ship pulls away from port. So, it starts off with just 4 of the cast members getting up there and singing, and then I always get Elsa and Anna confused, but Anna shows up and then sings something, and she has a chocolate ice cream cone. And well, here was the thing. My 11-year-old wanted to get hot chocolate. And so we were watching we started watching the show, and like I said, it was fun, but I didn't feel like I was missing anything to take him to get hot chocolate. So we did that. Wow. And, and it's not a real long show. It's about 25 minutes or so. And then they have, there's a DJ up there who plays music. The kids from Vibes Kids Club, they called it a flash mob, but it was just really a rehearsed thing that they did. They kind of had an area cordoned off for them before it starts. So that was kind of cool to see them do their thing before as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we got that out there. So if you're heading up to Alaska, you're not going to get Pirate Night, but you do get a Frozen kind of deck party. Well, let's turn to the kind of the meat of the cruise. Why you guys wanted to come up there? Now, they always have a naturalist on board that does a lot of talks ahead of time. Did you guys go see any of those by any chance?
Yeah, we did. I can't remember what his name was, but he gave a presentation on bears, and it was quite good. It seemed like he came out of his shell a little bit as the things got rolling, and he got into his stories talking about bears. But I learned a lot more about brown bears and black bears than I ever had before, and the efforts they take to protect them up there in Alaska. We actually ended up seeing a few bears in the wild on the way back from one of our excursions at a distance. But, if you see that on the itinerary, I would definitely suggest you go check it out. I can't remember. I don't think there was anything that was a must do that was opposite that. But we checked it out in the Buena Vista Theater and really thought it was worth the time.
How far away were the bears that you saw?
We did it's the White Pass in Yukon, or White. I'm going to get that name wrong, but the train ride up in Skagway that goes into British Columbia. We took the train up, and then we were on the bus back, and the driver and some of the passengers saw a bunch of buses pulled over on the side of the road. So he slowed down to see what it was. And I want to say 50 some odd yards away were these 2 black bears. And so we got out, and the driver made us promise to stay right in front of the bus because he wasn't really supposed to let us out, but everyone demanded that he stop. So he did, and I've got a couple blurry pictures of bears. But having just seen a couple grizzlies at Grouse Mountain in Vancouver, that was fine. I didn't need to see them that out in the wild, but it was still kind of cool to see them there nonetheless.
Well, let's jump into the meat of it then as far as the ports go. Now, your first big adventures on day 3, you leave Vancouver day 1, day at sea, and then day 3 is the big day where you go up to Dawes Glacier, up through Tracy Arm. Can you talk a little bit about that day, kind of your thoughts and what you thought once you got up to the glacier itself?
Sure. We did the tour that where they bring the 2 boats up to the Wonder, and you get on the smaller boats, and then you get up closer to the glacier.
I knew there was a tour like that. I've heard. Yeah. I've tried so hard to try and find this, and I okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I believe it's run by Allen Maritime Tours, or the Allen Fallon Group. I think they kind of use both names interchangeably while we were doing it. And that was really cool because I think we were about 10 miles away from the glacier when we boarded these boats. And then they sped on ahead of the Wonder. And then we would go into some of the, I'm not exactly sure what they're called, but the kind of the tributaries to that fjord. And they got us up close to some of the cascades that were coming down. So we got some really great pictures of my wife and the kids in front of the falling water. We had an opportunity to see some of the seals up closer that were resting on the berglets that were flowing down from Dawes. And then, just being closer to land, you had a better view of some of the eagles and things that were flying around. Of the two boats, the other one managed to get within, I want to say, like a quarter of a mile of Dawes Glaciers. They got it way up close, but there was something that was not great about the condition of the water there. So they radioed back to our boat and said, don't get any closer than the 1 mile. Which was still a lot closer than the Wonder got, because I think they got to about 3 miles away from the glacier when it was all said and done. But we had fantastic views. We got to see a slight bit of calving on the glacier, plenty of seals. They were all over the place. They had great concessions on the boat. All the hot chocolate and coffee you could drink for free, and then they had some libations for an extra charge. And I think they had like donut holes or something that they were giving away as well, and a little bit of other food that you could buy. But I highly recommend it. We had a great time. It was about 2 or 3 hours total, and then we got back to the Wonder in plenty of time to get back up to our room and look at the glacier from our veranda as well while we were there.
How many people? Like, how big were these boats?
They are 2 stories. The first story holds a couple dozen people. The second story probably holds about 20 or so people. And then there's an observation deck off the back of the second story of the boat. While it's moving, they won't open the observation deck that's kind of on the top of the ship, so like a third floor. But when they're stationary or going really slowly, they'll open that up and you can go up there and get a view as well. So, I don't know, it seemed like there was about 40, 50 people on each one of the boats.
And it didn't feel too crowded?
No, not at all. There was plenty, everyone was moving around to wherever they were the most comfortable. If people are getting a little chilly outside, they go back inside, and they have very nice open, large windows that you can see out of. So you're not missing much by being inside. I just preferred being outside, and I'm from Texas, and it was 100 degrees at home, and it was 60 degrees in Alaska. So I enjoyed the cold weather. So I spent as much time outside as I could.
So this is just a random question. You took a lot of pictures on this trip. Did you buy a special camera for it, or are you a photographer by nature, or what did you use to capture some of the photos that you got?
I just used my iPhone. I've known enough photographers, going back to when I was on the high school yearbook staff and everything like that. They gave me a lot of tips for taking pictures, and so I just took what I knew. You can look up some tips on how to get great pictures with an iPhone on the internet, and which I highly recommend. And then just did my best, and I just took lots. And then you may take 30 or 40 pictures, then you have 5 that you really like. And since we're not using film, there's no loss to doing that. But at the same time, I always tried to put the phone away, just so I could actually enjoy what was in front of me and not look at it through the screen. Anything
else about that day visiting the glacier then, Dennis?
I know that some of the people on the ship were disappointed that one side of the ship did not. When the Wonder was turning, they were under the impression the Wonder was going to turn a full 360 so that all sides of the ship was going to get to see it, but that's not what happened. And when it got there, it did a 180. So I think there's people waiting on one side that didn't get the full, front on view. I'd heard that was because there was a wedding somewhere on the ship and that the glacier was being used as a backdrop, and that's why they did that.
That's even worse.
But I can't confirm that. That's just the rumor I heard. But if you can get the tour, it's one of the more pricey things we did, but if you can do that tour, I highly recommend that.
Well, perfect. Well, the next day you guys are on to Skagway, and we kind of got a little hint of what you guys did there. What did you guys have planned other than the train ride up? Or let's talk about the train ride and anything else that you guys had planned.
Sure. Well, that was the only thing that we planned. That was our excursion, but we had time to kill before then. So we just got off the ship and wandered around Skagway for an hour and a half, and it was a nice little town. It kind of reminded me a bit of Nassau in the sense that there's a lot of diamond stores and jewelry stores around there that you could shop at if you wanted to. But that aside, there was a photographer. We went into his shop and looked at all of his pictures, and which he was quite good. I snapped some pictures of the kids in front of various totems that were around the city. And then we got back and did the train ride, which is a lot of fun. If you're going to do that White Pass and Yukon Trail, I just looked that up, everyone will tell you sit on the left side of the train because the right is the side that's on the mountain. I didn't find there was any trouble getting a seat on the left. There was more than enough seats for everybody. But beyond that, if the weather's nice, which it was for us, go stand out on the platform. It's a little windy out there, but you can look down into the valley. You can see farther. You can see more things out there and get even better pictures than you can if you're sitting in the coach.
The side that you sit on really depends, though, in which direction you're taking it, because the trains go in both directions. So, like, if you're taking the bus tour first versus just the train. So that's something to keep in mind. The seats rotate. So depending on which direction the train is, they will rotate the seats so that they're facing forward no matter whether you're going out or coming back in. So I think that's pretty interesting.
One of the tips that we got from our travel agent was to either take the train up and the bus back or the bus up and the train back. Would you agree with that, Dennis?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We took the train up and then the bus back, and that's why we had the opportunity to see those bears. And then we also stopped in front of the Welcome to Alaska state sign and had pictures taken there. There was a unique suspension bridge, and that it only suspended on one side that we got to stop in. And so you got to see a lot of other things by taking the bus back that you may not intuitively think would be an advantage to taking the bus over the train, but it was definitely worth. And it's a bit quicker than taking the train anyway, and you get back and you can do other things.
There was one other thing that we did too while we were there. There was a ranger station that was like right at the beginning of town that I thought was kind of cool. They had like a little museum in there where they kind of talked about the history of Skagway. And during the gold rush, it actually was the largest city in Alaska at one point. Actually, I take that back. I'm not sure if it was Skagway itself, but there was a town next to it. But right up in that area was the largest city in Alaska. Do you remember that, or did you guys go in that museum at all?
We went to Liarsville. That was part of the same tour. And we got that history as well about how important Skagway was to the gold rush at the time. And so I believe you're right that it was actually the largest city at the time. Juneau is now in Alaska, but we got a lot of history of how everyone came up through there in that area to look for gold and how there actually wasn't any there in Skagway. But for my money, the train ride itself is fantastic. I could have skipped Liarsville and been happy. The kids enjoyed panning for gold while we were there, but it was just kind of a add-on to the end of the excursion.
Well, from Skagway, you're on to the capital of Alaska, Juneau. What did you guys have planned there? What were your thoughts?
Well, that was our favorite day of the cruise. We started off with a excursion that combined a whale watching tour and then took us to Mendenhall Glacier. It was actually the same group that operated the tour to take us to see Dawes Glacier. So Allen Maritime Tours took us to see the whales, and we didn't get 2 minutes away from the dock before we saw our first whale. It was right off the bat. So we were real fortunate that way. We saw probably a dozen whales in total over the 3 hours or so that we were on that boat ride. We also got to see a couple of the other glaciers off in the distance. It was the Eagle and Herbert glaciers, so that was cool. Plenty of stellar seals that were out in the water that we got to see. But we also had all the same amenities that we did on the tour to see Dawes Glacier, so you could snack on the donuts and other. They would bring like samples of smoked salmon and local jams around as well for you to try, and so you kind of got a taste of local stuff, which was cool. So I recommend that. But my favorite part was going to see the Mendenhall Glacier. They dropped us off at the top near the visitor center, but right near that there is a little trail that you can hike down. It's a little less than 2 miles round trip, but you get a great view of the glacier and then Nugget Falls, which is right next to it. And that was just spectacular for all of us. We really enjoyed that. I could have used easily another 15, 30 minutes there, but you had enough time. You had more than enough time to walk down there, take some pictures in front of the glacier, in front of the falls, and then, walk back. You can do that without an excursion because there are buses in downtown Juneau that'll take you straight there that cost next to nothing. They may be free for that matter. But if you do nothing else in Juneau and you want to spend time on the ship, just go see Mendenhall Glacier and Nugget Falls and then go back.
Did you make it out to Mendenhall Glacier, Christy, when you guys went?
We did. I love it.
And I can't remember. How did you guys get out? Was that part of your tour when you guys went out there? Or did you take the bus?
Well, we took a bus.
Yeah, no, but not the city. You didn't take the city bus, I guess, that'll drop you off out there, like Dennis is talking about.
Right. We did not take a city bus. We took the bus that was our tour bus.
Right. Yeah, Mendenhall Glacier, just beautiful. I just saw some video of that where you guys were, Dennis, just recently. And I've never actually been out there, and those falls look amazing with the glacier in the background.
Oh, yeah. I took a lot of pictures while I was there, and I don't know. I feel like I'm overstating it, but I'm not sure that it's really possible. It was beautiful. We were blessed with really nice weather that entire week. It wasn't until Ketchikan that we had a little bit of rain on our excursion, and then that last day at sea on our way back that we had a lot of rain, which everyone on the cruise was sure to point out that we were having well beyond average weather for this for the cruise, and it was just a great day there in Juneau.
Well, we're recording late at night tonight again, and Christy, thank you so much for staying up and being part of the show again and being with us, but we're going to wish you adieu.
Thank you. And Dennis, it was great talking to you. I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, on to Ketchikan then, Dennis. What did you guys have planned there since we were just talking about it?
We did a excursion to a local lake where we did some canoeing, and then we canoed across the lake to a little camp that they had set up, and then we did a little bit of a nature hike after they had given us some snacks at the camp. The canoeing was fun, but it did rain on us a little bit, and I think the rain kind of scared away the wildlife because my understanding is normally you will see something like maybe a moose or whatever, but we didn't see much there. The camp was fun. I was expecting a little bit more out of the hike. I was expecting to have a longer path, but it really was a trail that they had laid down with some wooden planking, and the guide pointed out to you a lot about the ecology there and how there's not a lot of dense soil there. So how the trees, when they have their saplings, they grow on the fallen logs of other trees and how they fight for space. And he pointed out a lot of things about the vegetation there that I had no clue about and wouldn't even give it a second thought until he pointed out. So it was quite fascinating. It just wasn't as much of a hike as I thought. With the rain, a lot of the kids did not enjoy the canoeing part because they were getting cold and a little bit frozen. So the adults had to work a little bit harder, but that's okay. But it was fun. I can't remember what the other alternatives were for that, but out of all of our excursions, that was my least favorite, but still it was a good time.
Yeah, so Ketchikan, that's the rainiest city. It's between Ketchikan and there's a city or a little town over in Hawaii that I think is like the rainiest in the U.S., which, so...
Oh, okay.
Just FYI, chances of getting rained on. Yeah, boy, if you're in Ketchikan on a sunny day, that's kind of a rare day. So, with these excursions, and I might have missed it, did you book them separately or did you book them mostly through Disney?
I booked all of them through Disney. I just, there was one of the excursions, I want to say it was when we were in Skagway, that I had a feeling that it had the potential to go long and that we might be getting back a little bit late. And while we didn't get back after the scheduled departure time for the ship, we pushed it a little bit there. So having done a couple cruises, especially last year when I was in the UK, I just felt more comfortable booking through them because I knew they were going to wait for us, that they weren't going to leave. And so it wasn't ever really a danger, but it just was very convenient and very easy to meet in the D Lounge on the Wonder every morning and to get shoveled off to our cruise without having to go look for whoever it is we're supposed to meet.
Yeah, I think Ketchikan's one of the tough ones too. We went fishing that day, but there's fishing. You can always get on there's a couple of boat rides that kind of go back into some areas that you can see or you can fly. And I'm totally drawing a blank on the name of the national forest or park back there that a lot of the float planes fly back to. But a lot of those excursions can be pretty pricey in Ketchikan, so that's kind of a tough place to find an excursion in if you're not willing to drop a lot of money. It seems like, other than just the town itself there. So, yeah, I don't really have any thoughts as far as trying to get a better hike or something like that, I guess. And
yeah, and if you just want another day on the ship, Ketchikan is a port that you could get out and spend a couple hours in town and then get back on the ship and do stuff. We bought a birthday present for my father-in-law. It was a moose handle knife, which was fun getting through customs later. But we still had a good time wandering around there. They had a lot of totem poles that you could take pictures with. They had the lumberjack show. That's my regret that we didn't go see that, because once that got going, I could hear everyone cheering and having a really great time. And so on a future trip, that might be something we would do. But I liked Ketchikan. It just it seemed like it was kind of hard. It wasn't obvious as to what to do until you got out and explored a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I totally forgot about the Lumberjack show. That's kind of a fun one, especially if you got your kids and stuff like that, to go and watch them go back and forth and do some of the things they do, climbing up to the top of the logs and cutting it off, and so you can do it fastest. And so, but the other thing that's kind of cool too, did you appreciate this, being able to do most of the pretty much all the ports you pulled into, you pull in and you walk off the ship and you're right into town there.
Yeah, that was super convenient. And Skagway was especially beautiful, the setup they had with the pier there. And I know one of the guys, I was trying to take a picture of my wife and kids with the mountains in the background, and one of the guys just kind of working the pier said, "Hey, let me get a picture of you with you and your family." And so, he took the phone from me and got plenty of pictures with us, and you can get some great shots just there on the pier with the ship in the background. I've heard Christy say this on a previous podcast, but when you're in Alaska, it's like every time you turn a corner, it's like you're in a postcard. You're walking into another view of a postcard. And that's the absolute truth. Everything is just gorgeous there. One of the tour guides was explaining to us that they do a lot to preserve that view, that they have rules where they don't allow large buildings to be built down there on the waterfront. They don't allow billboards anywhere in the state. They go to lengths to preserve the beauty of the state, and it shows. They don't have major freeways between the towns there. The only way you can get to any of these places is by plane or by boat, and it really pays off for them.
Definitely. I think about a lot of the pictures that I really enjoy are looking back at it. 9 times out of 10, it's like the wonder. I've got one in Skagway that I just absolutely love, talking, like you said, with the hills in the background. It's just such beautiful scenery. I want to go back before we get to your last day at sea and getting off. Something we've never really talked about. I'm just kind of curious. You talked about formal night. Formal night's usually the second night on the ship, and you guys brought stuff to get dressed up. Why'd you guys do that? And what was your kind of thoughts for dressing up for formal night? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot at all, or anything like that. We try and do it too, but I was just kind of curious on your thoughts.
Oh, no, not at all. Well, we used to do annual family portraits, and over the years, the Sears Portrait Studios closed, and then the JCPenney Portrait Studios closed, and the ones that we were using were closing. And then with our schedules getting busier, it was always harder to get good family pictures and family portraits. And so part of the reason, not the main reason, part of the reason was my wife and I talked about it. I was like, well, I already own a suit. My oldest is in high school and he's part of the orchestra, so he has to have a suit occasionally for performances. And so I was like, why don't we just get one for our youngest, Alec, who's 11, and then we can get, they have some nice backdrops there in the atrium. We could get some nice pictures without even having to arrange a portrait setting. So that's what we did. And so we had, I think for the first time, myself and both my boys were all in a suit at the same time. And so, and then my wife was in a very nice dress. And so we took advantage of being on the ship to get some of those pictures, and they turned out really well. And we're going to use them, we're going to get some of them framed and hang them up in the house. So we're going to use them, probably some later for Christmas cards and the like. But then on top of that, it just made that night a little bit more special. We all got dressed up. My 11-year-old had never worn a suit before, and he felt like $1 million. He told me, he goes, I'd always wanted to do this. He admires his big brother, so he wanted to do the same thing his big brother was doing. And we only wore our formal wear for about 2.5 hours total, but it was just fun doing it. And it really added another nice element to the evening.
Yeah, we love doing that too. For a lot of the same reasons, we always try and get one really good picture with all of us kind of dressed up. There's something special about it, like you said. You kind of feel good to get dressed up, and that you don't. For those of you who are kind of averse to, don't want to get dressed up, you don't have to. It's not like everybody does, so you don't have to do that. But a lot of people will. And what's kind of cool is the ship's officers do as well, and they usually have that little get together before each one of the dinners out in the atrium itself, where you can get pictures with the officers or talk to the officers. And I don't know, I think it's just kind of a special evening. So that's why I was kind of curious what your thoughts were. Yeah.
And then, for the semi-formal night, we just kind of took our suit jackets and collared shirt, wore them with jeans and our nice shoes, and went out that way. And we had some pictures almost better than the formal night pictures. But it just kind of added a little something to the evening, which was a lot of fun.
Okay. Well, turning to your last day at sea then, did you guys do anything special that last day to kind of commemorate your cruise, or, just to kind of celebrate the last 6 days up in Alaska before you got back to Vancouver and headed home?
We didn't have anything really planned, and then my oldest was I don't want to say he was seasick, but the motion was kind of getting to him because the ship was rocky that day with the weather we were having. But I told you about my experience with Goofy and the bride, which was a lot of fun. We did do brunch at Triton's. That was the day that we had brunch. We missed Jack's Diaper Dash when we went to the Bahamas, so we made sure we caught that, which was that day, and that was a lot of fun. They only had 4 babies lined up for it, and only one of them could really crawl. But wow, could that kid crawl! I mean, they had to keep bringing him back to the starting line because they put him down and he kept bolting. The other one baby kind of scooted on her bottom. The other 2 just were not interested at all. But the kid that won, he was a world class crawler. He did a great job. And then Carly Sokolov, who was in the Book of Merman. I had not heard of this before I was there, but then I looked it up later, and I guess it was a off-Broadway production that was quite popular and famous. She's an impressionist. She had a show that we went and checked out, and she did a lot of Disney songs while impersonating Elvis or Celine Dion and other people, and so that was kind of fun. We did that. We watched another round of So You Think You Know Your Family. My wife and oldest son had tried all week to get onto that show. They didn't, but they did. But they tried real hard to get on, but we still had a good time watching that. That evening was Disney Dreams, and then we made sure we got another round of Dole Whips before the evening closed. And so it was a jam-packed day. We had one show or activity lined up right after the other, and pretty much had a good time all day.
Did you use the app for that for most of the cruise, as far as kind of keeping track of things that you wanted to do?
Yeah, I was going to tease Christy about that because I know she likes the paper navigator. But we got real comfortable with the app. Both my boys have phones, and so we all had the Disney Cruise Line app on it, and so we could message each other easily that way. And so we took a good advantage of that. If my 11-year-old wanted to go to the room and watch the Marvel channel or the Star Wars channel while we were at one of the games or whatever, he could do that, and we kept track of each other. But then anything that we're remotely interested in, I would hit that little heart icon next to it, and then I get the alert 15 minutes in advance, and then it'd say, hey, do you guys want to go do this, or do you want to do something else? And and we'd figure out what we wanted to do. But I don't really remember much downtime on this cruise where we were struggling to figure out anything to do because there was plenty listed there on the app.
I did the exact same thing. I put down hearts on everything, so you're constantly like getting messages. Oh, you want to do this? You want to do that? No, I mean, yeah, you think about like, how many times do you think you have that like sea day and you're like, oh man, it's gonna be a nice relaxing day, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that, and then the next thing you know, it's over. You've just packed it full of fun things to do. So, well, you guys finally make it back to Vancouver. Any thoughts about disembarkation as far as getting off and getting over to the airport?
It went pretty smoothly. We had breakfast at Tiana's place because that's where we dined the night before, and so we said goodbye to our servers. We were one of the last groups to have our luggage tag called, so we were fairly late in getting off the boat, but that's fine. We had several hours before our flight. But other than we had to retrieve that knife that we bought for my father-in-law because they took that, that took a minute or two. But then we had to explain we had to fill out the card when we were coming back into Canadian customs, and so I had to check the boxes that yes, we're bringing food because we had chocolate, and then we had to check off the thing about the weapons because we had the knife. And when they found out that it was not a spring-loaded knife, they did not care one bit and let us right in. We got in line for a taxi, waited about 15, 20 minutes, and then we were off to the airport. And we got there in plenty of time. Getting through customs at the airport wasn't too difficult. Then we just kind of strolled around the airport, found some snacks for the plane, and that was it. It was not particularly difficult at all.
Well, kind of thinking back on this cruise, this is your first time to Alaska. For somebody traveling to Alaska the first time, do you have any, kind of thinking back, are there any things that we missed to talk about, or do you have any tips for people traveling to Alaska for the first time?
I would definitely recommend a couple days in Vancouver, either before or afterwards. It's a shame to go up there it would be a shame to go up there and not spend any time in Vancouver because it's just a fantastic place. Do your research on where you want to eat if you do Vancouver. With Alaska, you do have the trick of trying to figure out exactly what to wear because I had lots of rain weather gear and cold weather gear, and it never, other than that last day when we weren't leaving the ship anyway, it never was particularly rainy or cold. So I had a lot of warm weather stuff that we never got out. We went ahead, we did laundry twice on the cruise. And so you don't have to bring quarters, you don't have to bring detergent, you don't have to bring any of that stuff. That worked out really well for us because I could either in the evening after the kids have gone to bed, or in the morning, especially on the sea, because after you spend a couple days in Vancouver, I need to do laundry right away. So that first day at sea, I got up and threw laundry in the machines. And what's really cool is that they will tell the app when you'll get a message when your laundry is done. So that made that real easy to handle. So, that's just the trick. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you have to pack both kind of cold weather and not so cold weather stuff. And so you can't necessarily bring a full week's worth of clothes for both and have storage for all that in your room. So you do be prepared to maybe do laundry along the way. But other than that, I mean, I don't know. To me, if you haven't done Alaska, it's a must-do cruise. I'm really glad we did it. Alaska is mile for mile the most beautiful place I've ever been, and I hope to go back someday in the future.
Well, talking about going back, what's next for you and your family? Did you guys book a placeholder, or do you have anything lined up in the future? What's next for you guys?
That's a good question. Before the cruise, when next year's itineraries had gone on sale, I booked the 7-night Mediterranean cruise from Barcelona to Rome on the Disney Magic for next summer. While I was on the ship, and I think it was that first day at sea, I went down and talked to that reservations desk about, seeing if I could shop the rate. And they give you that 10% discount if you book a cruise on board. But even with that 10% discount, it couldn't beat the rate that I got on that first day that the cruise went on sale back in, it was March or April. And so, it was actually a couple $100 more. And with my travel agent onboard credit, it was more than the credit that they were going to give me as well. So I wasn't saving anything there. I was tempted to do a placeholder, but I don't think I'm going to be able to take another cruise until after 2020's Mediterranean cruise until sometime in the summer 2021. And so I went ahead and passed for now and figure that we'll make that decision early next year, and I'll probably just book a cruise right off the bat the first day they go on sale and get the best price I can anyway.
Yeah, those popular cruises like a Mediterranean cruise, if you're really going to get your best price, it seems like. Unless you have that placeholder, you just happen to be on the ship right when they open up. It's tough to beat it. We've had the same problem too, where we've come on board and it's like not even touching it. Even our it was a spring break time cruise when we went on the Fantasy last. I didn't have a placeholder, so we went back on and tried to reprice it after already booking it. It was well above what we'd already paid. So. Well, good. That's exciting. Barcelona to Rome, right? Yeah. Have you done? You haven't done a Mediterranean? Well, you did the cruise around England, so you've been over there and done that. So, are you bringing the boys on this one?
Yes. Last year we didn't take them because it was just an anniversary cruise for my wife and I, and
right.
That was departed London, hit places in Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland, and then ended up in Bergen, Norway. But after that cruise, we decided that we had to get our kids over to Europe at some point. So we're adding a couple days in London, a couple days in Barcelona before the cruise, and then 2 days in Rome afterwards to take all that in, and really super excited about that one.
Yeah, that's perfect. And what's so cool about that is you get Barcelona and Rome on the bookends, plus everything in between. So it's a busy cruise, but man, I'm so excited for you guys. That's just amazing. I love the Mediterranean, and you're going to just have so much fun at all those different ports too. So, well, before we get out of here, we were talking about before the show, and you are a podcaster yourself, right?
Yeah, I sure am.
So why don't you take a little time and let the audience know some of the podcasts you're on, and if you want to check Dennis out and hear some more from him, he's got some pretty cool podcasts he's on.
Okay, well, thanks. I appreciate that. My primary podcast is called Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels, and it is all about Star Wars. We cover the movies, the books, the television shows, comics, you name it. We're talking about it at some point. And you can find that on iTunes, Spotify, or pretty much anywhere that you get a podcast. I also do a Star Trek podcast with my wife. She's a big Trekkie, and that's called Warp Trails, and that is on the RetroZap podcast network, and that's the only place you can get that one. But that podcast feeds, again, on pretty much everywhere you listen to podcasts. And then each month I do a comic review on Jedi Journals, and again, that's available wherever you get your podcasts.
Perfect. So if you're a Star Wars fan or Star Trek fan, make sure you check out Dennis's podcast. And I will, if you could send those to me, Dennis, or at least the Warp Trails one, because I'm not totally familiar with that one, I'll make sure that I get them in the show notes. So if somebody wants to go ahead and find it quickly, you can get it to the bottom of the show notes and click it there, and you'll be on your way listening to some more Star Wars and Star Trek stuff.
No, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's cool to talk to another podcaster too. So, well, thanks so much, Dennis, for coming on tonight. I really appreciate your time and sharing your and your family's beautiful cruise on board the Disney Wonder up to Alaska.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I had so much fun talking about it and reliving it.
Yeah, definitely. And when you guys get back from the Mediterranean, or if you guys decide to do something between now and then, we'd love to have you back, and we'll talk some more Disney Cruise Line.
Oh, count on it.
Awesome. Well, have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Dennis for coming on and sharing his and his family's just amazing cruise up to Alaska on the beautiful Disney Wonder. We recorded this episode a couple months ago, and I wanted to give you a kind of an update on his podcast status. He is involved with 3 different podcasts. However, one of them, Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels, has come to an end. However, you can still catch all those episodes on iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher. And if you'd like to hear more of Dennis, you can still catch him over on Warp Trails and Jedi Journals. Well, between this show coming out and our next show, we are going to be kicking off a new series called DCL 201. We're going to take some of those tips and tricks that we've learned through you guys and that we focus on the 101 series and kind of put them into action. So we're going to follow, this first one's going to be following my family's vacation, which we're planning next summer. So look for that. And there'll be quick, hopefully fun episodes to show you how we use all those tips that you guys have provided us over the years and put them into action when we actually plan our own vacations. So between now and our next show, if you would like to catch up Christy and I, you can always reach me, Steve, over at steve@dclpodcast.com. Of course, you can find me and Christy on Facebook at DCL Podcast and myself on Twitter at DCL Podcast. You can catch Christy over at Christy at packyourpixiedust.com, Pack Your Pixie Dust on Facebook, and Pack YR Pixie Dust on Twitter. And if you'd like to help support our show, you can always find all the information through our Patreon program over at patreon.com/DCL Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you who has taken the time to leave us an iTunes review and to support us through the Patreon program. So between now and our next show, if you're heading out on your next vacation, all of us here at the DCL Podcast would like to wish you fair winds and safe travels as you head out on that next adventure. Once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.